And it is time for the Rockland Business Journal with Tina Traster, sponsored by the Ugel Law Firm. Tina will be up in a minute.
Hello, I'm Scott Ugel of the Ugel Law Firm. I don't have to tell you how our world has dramatically changed. Today, many people are suffering financially and often do not know where to turn for help, as they have many questions. I have been practicing consumer law for over 35 years and have handled thousands of cases where we help people save their home through loan modifications and/or forbearance agreements by going to state Supreme Court, bankruptcy court, or without having to go to court at all. Please give me a call, as every situation is different, and let me tell you how I might be able to help you or someone you love. I'm Scott Ugel of the Ugel Law Firm.
And good morning, Tina Traster.
Good morning, Rockland County. How is everybody today?
Other than the fact that it's dreary and miserable outside, I guess we're all pretty good.
Yes, well, a touch of winter revisits until we're in the clear, I think usually by May. Today I'm going to provide an update on two stories that we covered last week and spoke about last week. First, there is the Valley Cottage homeowner with the illegal addition who came to court last week, and whose attorney came to court, and he came to court asking for time to work out a settlement with the town of Clarkstown. It appears that what the attorney for Edward Title is representing is that he has that his client has complied with what Clarkstown is now has been asking for in terms of land disturbance permits, topographical maps, and some efforts to stem the disturbed land to control runoff. He said that his client has submitted, quote, an as-built plan to the town. And again, he's asking that rather than litigate this in court, that they'll be able to settle this with the town. Now, here's why so many people have taken an interest in this story. The town is saying that he is coming back for a quote, an as-built permit. So that means that the illegally built second floor story of his house, he's really asking for that work, for a permit for that work after the fact. In addition to that, however, there's the issue that local activists, conservationists have raised, which is the cutting down of allegedly more than 100 trees. And want remediation on that site because these trees are not only on this homeowner's land, but they're also on town parkland that the town bought several years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how this winds down because. There's a lot of concern in the community as to what precedent Clarkstown is going to be setting with whatever decisions it makes. I'm going to use that as a segue to talk about Suez, because it almost sort of falls under the same umbrella in terms of people around the town of Clarkstown, and I would say around the county as a whole, are watching what goes on in Clarkstown as we look at the newest development for Suez. Suez is coming back to the town of Clarkstown for what they say is a more environmentally sensitive plan for its headquarters at the former Tilcon site. Last week they met with what's called the TAC committee. That's a technical advisory committee made up of town planners and engineers who basically will hear, it's like a pre-visit to the planning board, and they'll hear what they're planning to do, and they'll usually hash it out before an applicant is sent back to the planning board. But they've met with TAC, and they've been green-lighted to go back to the planning board, so that's where we'll expect to see them next. Now, as you may recall, they've already been to the planning board, and the planning board has twice deadlocked on a decision to allow them to build an 11,000 square foot building on site. And the crux of the matter focused on whether or not Suez's plan should have been subject to an extensive environmental review, and the reason for that is because of the site's proximity to Lake DeForest, which is Rockland's main source of drinking water. And the company has always maintained that their proposals were, quote, zoning compliant, but even zoning compliant plans are not exempt from environmental review. So from what we can tell, the proposed plan, the updated plan for an 11,000 storage building has been moved 100 feet or so to the east away from Lake DeForest. And at this time, they are now leaving a large swath of trees and vegetation alone as a buffer. So they previously had planned to strip away that land. And if their plans are reduced for what excuse me, for what's known as an area of disturbance below a certain threshold, which is again something that they're saying this time around, from 5 acres to 3.8 acres, and that they're going to likely argue that by doing this is what's called an unlisted action. And unlisted means that there's no presumption that they're going to need a full environmental impact statement, whereas before it was what was called a Type 1 action, which did have the presumption of whether or not they need a full environmental plan. So essentially what they're trying to do is say, last time around, we failed at the planning board because they weren't willing to proactively offer up the exercise of undertaking a full environmental plan, and the planning board deadlocked on whether or not to force them to do so. Now I think that they believe that they are under the wire in terms of land disturbance, and I think that, I know this sounds very wonky, but this is what is going to be debated, and it's good if citizens understand what will be debated when they come back. So we'll see them next at the planning board, and it remains to be seen, whether Suez's changes will satisfy the board members, and whether it will satisfy community members and water conservationists who are, a force to contend with and who are organized and who may not want to see any development on the banks of Lake DeForest. Prepare for this sort of round two of this boxing match.
Who did you say owns Lake DeForest again?
That's a good question. Who owns Lake DeForest? Is it Clarkstown or is it Suez?
Is it Suez? I'm thinking of that as you're talking.
Yeah, they might, but I'm sure that, but Clarkstown and the county, I believe that they have some rights over what happens to the county's drinking water. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, in a sense, it's these two stories are not related per se, but they are related only in that they both involve land disturbance and what tolerance the community has for that at this time in history. And so I think I don't mean to pair them together necessarily, but I do think that they both serve up notice to the town of Clarkstown and its decision makers that the community is watching how these decisions are made and formulated, and what the rationale is.
Callers are streaming in here now telling me that Suez Water owns the Lake DeForest.
Okay, so they own it, but ultimately it's Clarkstown's decision. Clarkstown has the
right, yeah.
The planning board has the power. To decide. To
tell what people can do with their own property.
well, that's, yes, I mean, we don't...
Oh, it's not just them, it's everywhere,
Yeah, we don't live in a... Yeah. That's the thing, is none of us lives in a vacuum. What I do on my property, yeah, it's my property, yep. But this is why we have ordinances. I mean, if we don't like the ordinances, then we need to change them. There are ordinances. There's a tree ordinance in Clarkstown. If you take down a tree, without a permit, there's a fine from $500 to $1,500.
Yep.
I mean, if you take down 100 trees, and don't forget, some of those are on town-owned land. I mean, presumably, you wouldn't like to think that somebody could go into a county park and clear the park because it might be on the perimeter of their property. So, yeah, I think we all prefer to live in a society of laws, and sometimes the laws feel they feel prohibitive. But in the end of the day, I guess we have to decide what's the greater good. Are we lawless? Can anybody do what they want on their property? But the case of the Valley Cottage homeowner is brazen because it's not even his property. He wandered onto town park. Now maybe he didn't even know. Who knows? Yeah. We haven't heard enough to know whether it was an accident. But either way, there's an accountability, and I think that it's similar with Suez. There's an accountability here. I think what environmentalists were looking for the first time around was, a full environmental impact statement, so that at least all of the elements are known, before the building takes place.
Right.
So we shall see. Both very interesting stories, both about.
And they're available in the Rockland County Business Journal. That's rcbizjournal.com.
Yeah.
And there they are, updated frequently. All right, Tina, thank you.
Okay.
We'll talk to you.